All right, let's go back in time today. Beep, boop, boop. All right, so I had a thought, and that's why we're here. I thought, could I make a family in The Sims that looks like they came right out of the 50s? Well, kind of. Is it exact? No, but it was fun to make them look as little as I could from my normal modern Sims family. I think you get the look I'm going for. So now, if I have a family, they need a house. If you give me a Sims family. On the surface, it's pretty much the same as any other themed build would be. I didn't use any CC, and that'll be pretty clear by the end. So just like the 50s family, I think you get the thing I'm going for, but it's not going to be perfectly accurate. Now, get ready for me to be a weirdo about retro design because I absolutely will. Fashion, architecture, and interior design from the mid-century to now is fascinating to me. I love seeing how it's evolved through the years and how design is repeated and how decades inspire the next. I read books about it. It takes up a lot of space in my brain. You'd think that would make me a stickler for accuracy, but opposite. Design is constantly influenced by other things and is so fluid through the years. Yeah, we associate certain styles with certain times, like bell bottoms or a shag rug with the 70s, but flare jeans were also popular in the early 2000s. I wore them exclusively back then. And shag rugs started their popularity in the early 60s, so they've been around for a long time. You see what I mean? Just because it's not the first reference we think of doesn't mean I'll consider it inaccurate. She says to excuse all of her building choices. The house I built is a red brick Cape Cod style house. I used this picture as inspiration for the exterior. You can absolutely see a house that looks like this today, and it might have only been built like 30 years ago, but I picked this one because the Cape Cod style house gained a lot of popularity after World War II in America. Colonial and Cape Cod style homes were like the most popular ones being newly built at the time. So I guess you can tell from a lot of things that I'm referring to the 1950s in America. When you're talking about a time like the 50s, it's probably more important to mention where you're talking about. Before the internet, the flow of information was a lot slower, and it simultaneously made the design of the decade both universal and somehow very regional. That sounds confusing, but let me explain. Something like the hairstyles might have all seemed the same in old pictures because there were probably like 4 hairstyles, 2 products to use for your hair, and no tips if your hair wasn't the same texture as the models. But saying everyone was wearing pastels because pastels were popular in the 50s was probably an overstatement. Maybe that was the way it looked in the magazines, but a lot of people were making their clothes or tailoring things that they had for years, which is different from later years where fast fashion made like a 90s girl embarrassed to wear her sister's old 80s dress. But in the 50s, if you were to dress someone in 40s outfits, it wouldn't seem that out of place. But for the most part, you probably weren't getting teased for not being trendy back then. You were probably getting teased for many other things. Imagine the social politics in school were pretty rough still. Probably a lot of act your assigned gender and don't be weird. So be friendly. Unless you're a girl, then don't be too friendly. Always be a lady. Unless you're a man, in which case, never do something a lady would do. The 50s. Must have been a fun time for mental health. So all of that to say, I'm not overly concerned with accuracy. Is that what you got from my rant? The build itself is pretty straightforward. I'm not really building anything that out of the ordinary, but I thought I'd share why I made certain decisions. All right, let's run down some of the 1950s interior design greatest hits. Wall-to-wall full carpeting, knotty pine kitchens, like the entire kitchen, Formica countertops, wood paneling, pink bathrooms. I'm obsessed with it all. My biggest struggles were the kitchen, to start. That knotty pine is a very distinct orangey wood color. It's pretty recognizable in older American homes. So I couldn't find the right color or texture, and I didn't want the cabinets to look too modern. I paneled the entire kitchen to avoid finding backsplash to go with the vinyl flooring. I think it's tile in The Sims, but it looks like vinyl. Now, vinyl kitchen floors were very common back then. It's cheaper than tile. And this exact swatch looks so close to a vintage vinyl I saw online. Like, perfect. That was the one thing I was sure about in the kitchen. And I planned on playing with my 50s family in this 50s house, so stay tuned for that upload because there will be one. I noticed a lot of built-ins and shelving in general when I was looking up old 50s interior design, so I tried to incorporate that where I could, which worked out kind of well because none of the wall art in Sims 4 really felt super appropriate for my old school house, so I just filled the walls with shelving instead. What was very appropriate was all of the pink swatches we have for the bathroom stuff. Pink bathrooms were apparently very popular back then. Now, I don't especially want to get into the weird bathroom I have in the primary bedroom, but I feel like I have to explain myself. I was so stuck on recreating the exterior I did first, which I don't normally do. So I have my exterior shape and I really was just trying to squeeze everything into it, and I didn't want just one bathroom. So I shrunk the parents' room down to almost an unplayable degree so I could squeeze in another bathroom. I honestly couldn't figure out how to put the bed in that room after that and have it not look ugly. It still looks ugly, but honestly, it would have been worse to play in this house without having a second toilet. I guess I could have changed the exterior. Moving on. So let me talk to you a little bit about my 50s family. I have John and Helen. John is very boring. He has a boring office job, but Helen has a thriving book club. She's more fun. She's got lots of friends and just more fun to play with in general. They have a son who is a kid. He just loves sports and running around, being a rambunctious kid. And their daughter's a toddler, so she loves toys and throwing things, probably, I don't know. My experience with toddlers is limited to the few years I worked in a preschool, so I know very little about them. I made the backyard pretty much identical to an old catalog I saw. I saw this patio with beams going across, and I thought, oh my god, I could do this exact same thing in Sims. And I thought no further than that. I don't care if it looks good or if it's realistic for the house I built. I've never done this in a build before, and I saw it, thought it was pretty easy to recreate, and I just kind of thought it was interesting. So this is the final build. I know you can't keep Sims from using modern technology, but I did keep a TV out of the living room. I don't know how common they were back in the 50s, but I do know by the end of the 60s, there's something like 95% of homes that had TVs. So I wasn't sure this far back if they'd have one, but I just kept it out anyway. They have a record player instead. Now, I had a lot of fun building this. Would I call this a fun thing to do? I think you might have to have the right overlap of sim dork and vintage design weirdo to have the most fun building a house like this. So making a retro build was definitely easier than making a retro family, that's for sure. So it's definitely doable without custom content, but you might need a lot of packs. I don't own every pack, but I used an item from just about every pack I do own, so it's a lot. It was fun to do, and I hope you check out some of my other builds. I'll have another video up in a couple days, and you will see my 50s family again soon if you stay tuned. So I'll see you then. Bye.